I don't know why you're comparing the kind of poor the Pope was and the kind of poor that Nigerians are going through, that you will be sending this kind of message. Like you're talking to the kind of what kind of virtue is the poverty that somebody cannot eat 3 square meals? What kind of virtue is the poverty that people cannot afford to have quality education? What kind of poverty is a virtue that people cannot go to the hospital to afford to get quality health care? Do you think the kind of poverty that poor in spirit, the biblical poor, do you think is the kind of poor that Nigerians are going through? Why are you guys mistaking both? You see, some messages are good, but most times the problem is the messenger. I know that you tell me take the messenger, leave the messenger, but sometimes it just clashes and you just cannot help but criticize the message that is coming from the messenger. Anyway, the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church died on Easter Monday, yes, and he's been laid to rest. World leaders all thronged the Vatican for the burial. Our own Senate President Godswill Akpabio led the delegates from Nigeria who went to attend the burial at the Vatican. So after the burial, stories started coming out about how modest, the Pope was while he lived, and also the fact that he lived a life of sacrifice, which is worthy of emulation by all, right? So this story, people started preaching and, started talking about it. It got to a point where it was also discovered that the Pope, as of the time he died, he was just worth $100. That was what it was worth. And it got a lot of people talking. Like this man that was the head of the Catholic Church was just worth only $100. People started using that as like a point of reference on how one should actually live the life of the kind of life that the Pope lived, and why we should, pay attention to, or we should focus more on our impact on this earth rather than what we want to possess, like worthy possessions. So you see, the Senate President decided to jump on the bandwagon of those who are using the Pope's, life to preach, and the Pope's life, especially the area of the, being worth $100 to preach. So he was like a guest, I think from the Vatican, he was a guest on NTA. And this was what he said. Listen to him, and when we come back, we'll talk.
And you have a man who died as a man today, the Pope, who was worth only $100, showing that yes, you cannot worship God in splendor, and that the best way to worship God is to worship God through self-sacrifice for others. So the message is very clear that Nigerians should love one another, and that poverty is not a crime, and that poverty could sometimes be a virtue of God, and that whatever you have, you should be able to share with your brothers and sisters.
Well, don't get me wrong, the Senate President's conversation was going well, right? Until he said, poverty is not a crime. Of course it's not a crime, but it can sometimes be a virtue. You see, all of them saying the Pope died and he was worth only $100 and poverty is a virtue. Yeah. They are not living by example. All they are saying is just for people. Like, just tell people, but they are not practicing what they preach. And in any case, the Pope might be poor, but the Pope could afford 3 square meals. The Pope was the leader of the Catholic Church worldwide. The Pope was living in a country where he had, access to quality, healthcare before he died. The Pope does not need to have, dollars stashed somewhere for you to call him a rich man or a poor man. He didn't even need to have money, but he was in a system working for him. In any case, I don't know why you're comparing the kind of poor the Pope was and the kind of poor that Nigerians are going through, that you will be sending this kind of message. Like you're talking to the kind of what kind of virtue is the poverty that somebody cannot eat 3 square meals? What kind of virtue is the poverty that people cannot afford to have quality education? What kind of poverty is a virtue that people cannot go to the hospital to afford to get quality health care? Do you think the kind of poverty that poor in spirit, the biblical poor, do you think is the kind of poor that Nigerians are going through? Why are you guys mistaking both? Why are you guys making it look like, okay, you see that kind of poor, that is the kind of poor that it's a virtue? If that is what you mean, why are you people not practicing what you preach? Every day you guys have, having crab mentality, put down because you want to be the one that is at the Senate. You want to be like every day you people are scampering like playing all manner of games and tricks to remain in power. And remaining in power means grabbing more money, wealth, and all of that. So why not you give up everything just to be poor in spirit and then let that kind of poverty be the virtue? Only when you guys want to talk to Nigerians to justify that their poverty, they should embrace it, their poverty. That is when you will be preaching this kind of preaching just because you want to suit your narrative. The kind of poor that is a virtue, is it the type that they cannot afford to go to good schools? Is that the kind of poverty that is a virtue? No. You can't in any way compare the kind of poor that the Nigerian poor people are experiencing for you to be sending this kind of message. Is not the same thing at all. Now, if it's the same thing, let you people show that example. Be that poor. Let's see that poor that you're talking about. Because I find it very laughable that you want to use the kind of poor that the Pope was to the kind of poor of somebody in Nigeria who is going through it, who cannot even afford to have fuel to fuel their cars or to even go to the market to buy food to eat. So they should take down as the virtue, the poverty that is, according to you, a virtue. How about Senate President? You have one case in Nigeria that you are supposed to be attending to, but hey, you are the one now preaching to us about poverty and the one that is a virtue. The life of sacrifice that we all should sacrifice. How many sacrifices are you guys making as politicians? Are you guys ready to sacrifice the kind of allowances and packages they give to you people on a monthly or yearly basis for us to have good schools, for us to have access to good medical care? You people have that money, amass all this kind of wealth, go abroad for treatment, and then sit abroad and be sending message to the poor in Nigeria that their poverty is a virtue. You have to be clear about the kind of poverty, because if I know that it's because of the life of the Pope that you're sending us poverty message. So that means you want the poor people who cannot eat to be thinking about their own kind of poor is a kind of Pope's poor. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. The Pope can afford not to have any raw cash in his hand or in his account, not have any £1 or $1 or whatever currency they use. He can afford not to have it anywhere. But the Pope is fine. Like if we have the best of health care in the world. And then you're sending this kind of preaching to Nigerians. The poverty that you cannot feed 3 times a day, you cannot afford 3 square meals. The poverty that you cannot go to hospital and afford good care. The poverty that you cannot, do like the basic things, afford a good apartment, drive on a good road. That is not the poverty that comes with a virtue. No. Let me take some people's comment on that. Trust Nigerians, They said, do you love us, sir? That's the question, because if you do, you suppose don't advise Big Daddy. Michael underscore you said, now poverty politicians they use win election. Why wouldn't it be a virtue? I am King Dinero one said, but one pastor says Jesus no like poor people. Which one we could now take? Mental Healthcare said, it's how politicians think poverty is a virtue and preachers think poverty is destruction. Faith Fitness Store says, lead by example, Oga. Please donate all your money and become poor, since it's a virtue of God. And I call you. Ude the preacher said, Big Chief, you no good like embrace that virtue. Wives Roundtable said, a virtue you don't want you and your family to the 10th generation. Virtue, Osorono, so that means, is this virtue sweet? Is that kind of virtue, poverty virtue, sweet to you? Chloroid the boss said, when they want to press your neck even the more, politicians will mention God. These are God too merciful, Sha. Why not send Angel Gabriel for like 10 seconds to do small shake and bap all their heads with fire and brimstone? Demilade Luciana said, the Pope chose in the midst of plenty to take little, not that the $100 was imposed on him. Oloribasi said, I would have said he is so far from the reality. He deliberately chose to romanticize poverty. Dear Senate President, since poverty is a virtue, embrace her fully, sir. That was Oloribasi. Jenny Kishi said, this man, they annoy me, eh? OB_Mike said, men see people where they lead us. So yeah, it's only when they want to weaponize poverty, they make it look like they present it in such a way that it's something that people should accept as the will of God. But when it comes to them, they know how to play the game so that the wealth will be in their family and continue from generation to generation. So there are issues in Nigeria. This is not a time to make it look like, okay, people who are complaining shouldn't complain. They should embrace their poverty because it's a virtue. No, it is not. There are genuine problems. Pope decided in the midst of plenty to live that modest life. It wasn't a poverty forced on him. It was a calling that he decided to, leave everything, every worldly possession, and followed Christ. He was not looking for one oil well, or he wasn't looking to be part of people who are scrambling to be, in power and all of that. No, he left everything and faced God. So for that, whatever he was doing, God made sure he was okay. He was well taken care of. So he didn't have to have money somewhere. So please, Oga, don't mistake Pope's kind of poverty to the kind of poverty Nigerians are going through. They are just two different things. Just do and come back and you should tackle the kind of poverty that Nigerians are going through. That one is not a virtue. It is not a virtue. It's a cancer. That kind of poverty that people cannot feed. The kind of poverty that will lead to death if they don't eat. The kind of poverty that can make them, if they don't have good care, they can make them lose their lives, and you're saying what? You see these politicians, it's just God that will save you people, because you sat down on that television and you're using God's name to make poverty look flashy, right? You people should just fear God, that same God that you are calling up and down. Because if it was like an instant God of instant judgment, all of us, including you, as you're saying it on that television, boom, instant judgment, because you are capping. You're capping. Anyway, guys, tell me what you think. What do you think about what the Senate President said? Let's meet in the comment section and continue to have the conversation. All right, then. I see you again in my next video. Bye for now.